In a distant corner of the galaxy, far from the reaches of human space, a civilization was dying. The Valens, an ancient and proud species with translucent skin that shimmered like crystal under their dim red sun, were facing extinction. Their planet, once lush and vibrant, was now shrouded in darkness. A mysterious black cloud had appeared without warning, spreading across the land like a shadow given life. It consumed everything it touched: forests, rivers, cities, and even light itself. Nothing could stop it. The Valen leaders called it the Devourer. Scientists worked tirelessly to understand its nature, but every probe sent into the cloud vanished without a trace. Desperate, they searched through old archives for any clue that might save them. Deep within forgotten records left behind by humanity centuries ago, they found something unexpected: a message. If all else fails, it read, "Call us." At first, the idea seemed absurd. Humans hadn't been seen or heard from in over 200 years. They had abandoned Earth long ago, scattering across the stars in search of new homes. But the Valens had no other options. With trembling hands, the Council activated an ancient communication device buried beneath layers of dust. The signal shot out into the void, carrying their plea for help. Light years away, aboard the human colony ship Asterisk, the Horizon Asterisk, Emma Carter was running diagnostics on the ship's systems when the signal came through. She frowned as strange symbols flickered across her screen. After a moment of decoding, she realized what she was looking at: a distress call. Her heart raced as she read the message aloud to herself. "We are the Valens. Our world is ending. We need your help." Emma hesitated only briefly before taking the information to her captain, Daniel Hayes. A tall man with sharp features and piercing blue eyes, Daniel was known for his calm demeanor and quick thinking. He listened intently as Emma explained the situation. At first, he dismissed it as interference or some kind of glitch. Humans didn't get involved in alien affairs anymore, not after the Great Exodus. But there was something about the tone of the message that caught his attention. It wasn't just a cry for help. It was a last resort. Daniel gathered his senior crew members in the briefing room. Alongside Emma sat Ryan Bennett, the ship's pilot, whose easygoing smile masked a sharp mind. Next to him was Sophie Martinez, a biologist with a knack for solving puzzles, and Leo Grant, the gruff but dependable head of security. Daniel laid out the facts. An alien race was reaching out for assistance, claiming their planet was being destroyed by some unknown force. Opinions in the room were divided. Ryan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "It sounds risky," he said. "We don't know anything about these Valens, or this cloud thing. For all we know, it could be a trap." Sophie shook her head. "But what if it's not? If an entire civilization is on the line, how can we ignore that?" Emma nodded in agreement. "And think about it. We're explorers. That's why we're out here, isn't it? To make a difference." Leo remained silent, his expression unreadable. Finally, Daniel spoke. "I won't force anyone to go. But if even one of you thinks we should answer this call, then I'll take us there." No one objected. Despite their fears, curiosity and duty outweighed caution. Within hours, the Horizon Asterisk changed course, heading toward the coordinates provided in the signal. As the ship moved deeper into uncharted space, the crew couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into something far bigger than themselves. The Valens' world grew closer with each passing day, and so did the questions swirling in their minds. What exactly was this black cloud? And why, after centuries of silence, had the Valens turned to humanity for help? Whatever answers awaited them, one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. As the Horizon Asterisk approached the Valen homeworld, the crew prepared for their first contact with the alien species. None of them knew what to expect. The planet loomed ahead, its surface half covered by the ominous black cloud. What little remained untouched looked bleak. Gray skies, barren fields, and crumbling cities. It was clear that the Valens were running out of time. When the ship entered orbit, a transmission crackled through the comm system. A voice, soft but strained, spoke in broken English. "Humans, you have come." Emma quickly responded, introducing herself and Captain Daniel Hayes. Moments later, a fleet of sleek, silver vessels emerged from the atmosphere and surrounded Asterisk. The Horizon Asterisk. The Valens weren't taking any chances. The crew was invited down to the planet's surface, where they landed near one of the few remaining intact structures, a towering crystalline palace that shimmered faintly under the dim red sun. As they stepped off their shuttle, they were greeted by a group of Valens. Tall and elegant, their translucent skin glowed faintly, giving them an almost ethereal appearance. Their large, almond-shaped eyes studied the humans with a mix of awe and unease. A Valen leader named Lyra stepped forward. Her voice carried both authority and desperation. "Thank you for answering our call," she said. "We feared no one would come." Daniel nodded politely but wasted no time getting to the point. "Tell us about the cloud. What do you know?" Lyra led them inside the palace, where holographic displays showed images of the Devourer's spread. It had started small, appearing as a dark spot on the horizon. But over months it grew larger, consuming entire regions. Scientists had tried everything: energy barriers, chemical dispersants, even attempts to redirect asteroids into its path. But nothing worked. Worse still, anyone who ventured too close vanished without a trace. Emma listened carefully, her mind racing with possibilities. "Have you analyzed its composition?" she asked. Lyra hesitated before answering. "Our instruments cannot penetrate it. Whatever it is, it defies our understanding." Sophie leaned closer to the holograms, her brow furrowed. "It doesn't behave like a natural phenomenon," she murmured. "Could it be artificial?" The room fell silent. The idea seemed far-fetched, yet no one could deny the eerie precision with which the cloud moved. If it was indeed man-made, or rather, alien-made, it raised troubling questions about its origins. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. "So let me get this straight," he said. "You want us to figure out something your best scientists couldn't. No offense, but why us?" Lyra's gaze softened. "Because you are humans. Your kind has faced extinction before and survived. You carry resilience within you. Perhaps you can see what we cannot." Her word hung heavy in the air. Though flattered, the crew knew the odds were against them. Still, they agreed to investigate further. Back aboard Asterisk, the Horizon Asterisk, tensions began to rise. Ryan paced the bridge, muttering about how reckless the mission felt. "We don't even know if we can trust them," he said. "What if this whole thing is a setup?" Emma shot him a sharp look. "And what if it's not? Do we just turn away and let them die?" Daniel intervened before the argument escalated. "Enough. We're here now, and we'll do what we came to do. Let's focus on gathering data." Over the next few days, the crew launched probes toward the edge of the cloud. Each probe sent back fragments of information, painting a picture of chaos and destruction. Energy readings spiked erratically, and gravitational forces twisted in ways that defied logic. Sophie spent hours analyzing the data, her theories growing bolder with each discovery. Meanwhile, Leo kept a watchful eye on the Valens, wary of potential betrayal. Despite their efforts, progress was slow. Frustration mounted as the crew realized the enormity of the task before them. Yet amidst the tension, a spark of determination burned brighter. They had been called upon in humanity's name, and failure wasn't an option, not while lives still hung in the balance. The crew of Asterisk, the Horizon Asterisk, gathered in the ship's main lab, staring at the latest data from the probes. The readings were baffling. Spikes of energy, strange gravitational pulls, and patterns that seemed almost alive. Sophie Martinez tapped her fingers nervously on the table as she reviewed the information. "This isn't just a cloud," she said finally. "It's reacting to things, like it knows we're here." Emma Carter frowned. "You mean it's intelligent?" Sophie hesitated. "Maybe not in the way we think of intelligence, but it's definitely not random. It's responding to our probes, almost like it's testing them. Daniel Hayes crossed his arms, his expression grim. Testing them for what? No one had an answer. The mystery only deepened when Leo Grant reported something odd about the Valen's behavior. He'd noticed increased activity around the palace, with groups of Valens moving supplies and equipment into underground bunkers. When he asked Lyra about it, she brushed him off, saying it was routine preparation for emergencies. But Leo wasn't convinced. "We need to get closer," Emma said suddenly, breaking the silence. All eyes turned to her. "If we really want to understand this thing, we can't just rely on probes. We need to go inside the cloud." Ryan Bennett nearly choked on his coffee. "Inside? Are you serious? That's suicide." "It's risky," Daniel admitted. "But she's right. So far, everything we've tried has been from a distance. If we don't take a closer look, we'll never figure out how to stop it." After much debate, they decided to send a small team in a shuttle. Emma volunteered immediately, and Sophie insisted on joining her, eager to study the phenomenon firsthand. Ryan reluctantly agreed to pilot the craft, while Leo stayed behind to monitor their progress from the horizon. Before leaving, Daniel reminded them to stay alert. "If anything feels wrong, pull back. No heroics." The shuttle descended toward the edge of the cloud, its surface shimmering like liquid darkness. As they approached, the air grew thick with static electricity, and the instruments on the shuttle began to malfunction. Ryan gripped the controls tightly, sweat beading on his forehead. "This is insane," he muttered. "We shouldn't be doing this." Emma ignored him, her eyes glued to the viewport. The closer they got, the more surreal the scene became. The cloud seemed to pulse faintly, as if breathing. Strange shapes flickered within it, twisted forms that looked almost like buildings or machines, though they dissolved before anyone could make sense of them. Then, without warning, the shuttle was engulfed. Darkness swallowed them whole, and every screen went black. For a moment, panic set in. But then, something extraordinary happened. Images began flashing across the interior of the shuttle, not on screens, but in midair like projections. They saw glimpses of alien worlds, battles fought among the stars, and civilizations crumbling into dust. The visions were chaotic, overwhelming, and filled with despair. Sophie gasped, clutching her head. "It's memories," she whispered. "This thing is feeding on them." Emma's heart raced as she realized what they were witnessing. The cloud wasn't just consuming matter, it was devouring emotions, experiences, entire lives. It was alive in the most horrifying way possible. "Get us out of here," Ryan shouted, his voice shaking. He yanked the controls, and the shuttle lurched forward, breaking free of the cloud's grip. They emerged into clear space, blinking against the sudden brightness. Everyone was pale and shaken, but alive. Back aboard the Horizon they shared their findings with the others. Sophie explained her theory. The cloud was some kind of ancient weapon designed to erase entire civilizations. But who or what had created it, and why had it come to the Valen's world? As the crew discussed their next steps, tension simmered beneath the surface. They had seen the enemy up close now, and it was far worse than they imagined. Yet despite the fear gnawing at their resolve, they knew one thing for certain. Turning back was no longer an option. The crew of the Horizon was quiet after the shuttle returned from the cloud. Everyone had questions, but no one seemed ready to speak. Emma sat in the lab, staring at the data they'd collected, her mind racing with possibilities. Sophie paced back and forth, muttering to herself about the visions they'd seen inside the cloud. Ryan stayed in the cockpit, gripping the controls as if he were still fighting to escape the darkness. Even Daniel, usually calm and decisive, looked troubled. Finally, Sophie broke the silence. "It's not just a weapon," she said firmly. "That thing, it's alive. And it's feeding on more than just matter. It's consuming memories, emotions, Entire histories. Emma nodded slowly. And it's growing stronger every time it feeds. If we don't stop it soon, it'll spread to other planets, maybe even to human colonies. Daniel rubbed his temples, trying to think clearly. But how do we fight something like that? We don't even know where it came from. Sophie hesitated before speaking again. What if it came from us? The room went still. All eyes turned to her. I'm not saying humans created it directly, she clarified quickly. But remember what we saw inside the cloud. Images of war, destruction, collapsed civilizations. What if this thing is tied to humanity's past? Maybe it's a remnant of some experiment or weapon we made centuries ago, long before the Great Exodus. Ryan scoffed. That's a stretch. Humans haven't been anywhere near this part of the galaxy in ages. Why would one of our old weapons show up here now? It doesn't have to be recent, Sophie argued. Think about it. Humanity left Earth behind, but we left a lot of things behind too. Satellites, probes, experiments. Some of them might have gone wrong. Or maybe someone else found one of our creations and tried to use it without understanding the consequences. Daniel frowned. Considering her theory, it sounded far-fetched, but it wasn't impossible. Humanity had always been reckless when it came to exploration and technology. Could this be the price of their carelessness? Before anyone could respond, Leo burst into the room. His face was pale, and his usual calm demeanor was gone. We've got trouble, he said. The Valens are hiding something. What do you mean? Daniel asked sharply. Leo explained. While monitoring communications between the Valen leaders, he'd overheard fragments of a heated argument. One faction wanted to continue working with the humans, while another insisted they handle the situation themselves. More concerning, though, was a cryptic mention of the project. When Leo pressed Lyra for answers, she avoided his questions entirely. It sounds like they've been experimenting with the cloud, Leo concluded, maybe trying to harness its power. Daniel slammed his fist on the table. If they've been messing with it, they could have made it worse. Sophie looked worried. Or maybe they're the reason it's here in the first place. The crew decided to confront the Valens immediately. Back on the planet's surface, Daniel demanded an explanation from Lyra. At first, she denied everything, her glowing eyes flickering nervously. But under pressure, she finally admitted the truth. A rogue faction of scientists had been studying the cloud for years, hoping to unlock its secrets and turn it into a weapon. Instead, their experiments had destabilized it, causing it to grow uncontrollably. You used it, didn't you? Daniel said, his voice cold. You tried to control it, and now your whole planet is paying the price. Lyra lowered her head, shame written across her face. We thought we could save ourselves, she whispered. We never meant for this to happen. Emma felt a mix of anger and pity. The Valens weren't so different from humans after all. Desperate, flawed, and willing to take dangerous risks. But now, because of their actions, countless lives were at stake. As they left the palace, the crew knew they had to act fast. The cloud was spreading faster than ever, and trust between the humans and the Valens was shattered. Whatever solution they came up with, they'd have to do it alone. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on their shoulders. Failure wasn't an option, not when the fate of two species depended on them. Back aboard Asterisk, the Horizon Asterisk, the crew gathered in the briefing room, their faces tense with frustration and urgency. The truth about the Valens experiments had changed everything. They weren't just dealing with a natural disaster. They were facing the consequences of arrogance and hubris, traits that seemed all too familiar to humanity itself. Sophie sat at the table, her notes spread out in front of her, while Emma stared blankly at the wall, lost in thought. Ryan leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, his usual confidence replaced by unease. Daniel broke the silence. We know what we're up against now, he said firmly. But knowing isn't enough. We need a plan, one that works. Sophie spoke first. If the cloud is feeding on energy, maybe we can overload it. Give it more than it can handle and destabilize it from within. Emma nodded slowly. It's risky, but it could work. If we use Asterisk, the Horizon Asterisk's reactor core, as a power source, we might be able to create a massive energy pulse, strong enough to disrupt its structure. Ryan's jaw tightened. You mean sacrifice the ship and everyone on it? It might come to that, Daniel admitted, his voice heavy. But if we don't try, this thing will keep spreading. It'll destroy the Valens, then move on to other planets, maybe even ours. Leo, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. What about the Valens? Do we tell them our plan, or do we leave them out of it? Daniel hesitated. Trust between the humans and the Valens was fragile at best. After discovering their role in creating the crisis, it was hard to feel sympathy for them. But abandoning them entirely felt wrong. We'll keep them informed, he decided. They deserve to know what we're doing. Even if they caused this mess, they're still victims. As the crew prepared for their final mission, tensions ran high. Sophie worked tirelessly in the lab, running simulations and calculations to ensure the energy pulse would be effective. Emma focused on modifying the ship's systems, rerouting power from non-essential functions to the reactor core. Ryan spent hours in the cockpit, double-checking every system and contingency plan. Meanwhile, Leo kept a close eye on the Valens, making sure they didn't interfere. During one late-night shift, Emma found herself alone in the engine room with Leo. She could tell he was troubled. "You okay?" she asked softly. Leo sighed, leaning against the wall. "I keep thinking about Earth," he said. "About how we left it behind because we messed it up so bad. Now look at these Valens. They did the same thing. History just keeps repeating itself." Emma nodded. "Maybe that's why we're here. To break the cycle. To fix what we can before it's too late." The next day, the crew presented their plan to the Valen Council. Lyra listened intently, her expression a mix of hope and guilt. When Daniel finished explaining, she bowed her head. "You've given us more than we deserve," she said quietly. "If your plan succeeds, we will never forget your sacrifice." With the Valens' blessing and their promise to stay out of the way, the crew began the final preparations. As they worked, each member of the team grappled with their own fears and doubts. Ryan recorded a message for his younger sister back home, telling her how proud he was of her. Sophie wrote pages of notes, hoping someone would find them useful if they survived. Emma tinkered endlessly with the reactor, refusing to let herself think about what lay ahead. Finally, the moment came. The Horizon Asterisk moved into position near the heart of the cloud, its systems humming with barely contained energy. The crew strapped themselves in, their faces pale but resolute. Daniel gave the order to begin the sequence. As the countdown started, Emma glanced around the bridge. For the first time since they'd arrived, she felt a strange sense of peace. Whatever happened next, they were doing the right thing. They were explorers, survivors, and protectors. And though the end might be near, their actions would ensure that others had a chance to live. The ship shuddered as the reactor reached critical levels. Outside, the black cloud loomed closer, pulsing with dark energy. The crew braced themselves, ready to face whatever came next. As the Horizon Asterisk approached the heart of the black cloud, the crew prepared for what they knew might be their final moments. The ship's reactor core hummed with energy, its power levels climbing higher than ever before. Emma sat at her station, monitoring the systems while Sophie double-checked the calculations one last time. Ryan gripped the controls tightly, guiding the ship through the swirling darkness that surrounded them. Leo stood near the viewport, his eyes fixed on the ominous void outside. Inside the cloud, the air felt heavier, almost suffocating. Strange visions flickered around them, flashes of war-torn cities, dying stars, and faces twisted in agony. The crew had seen these images before, but now they were more vivid, more personal. Each vision seemed to target their deepest fears and regrets. Emma saw her brother again, the accident that had taken his life when she was just a teenager. She had always blamed herself, convinced she could have saved him if she'd acted faster. Now, the memory played out in front of her, clearer than ever. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "I'm sorry." Ryan's vision was different. He saw his younger sister, alone and scared, calling out for help he couldn't give. It wasn't real. He knew that, but it felt real enough to make his chest tighten. He clenched his fists, forcing himself to focus on flying the ship. "Not now," he muttered under his breath. "Not yet." Sophie's mind was flooded with images of failure. Experiments gone wrong, colleagues lost, chances missed. For years, she had pushed herself to prove she belonged among the best scientists. But here, in this place of despair, she realized how much pressure she had put on herself, and how lonely it had made her feel. She took a shaky breath, reminding herself why she was here. "This isn't about me," she said softly. "It's about stopping this thing." Leo faced something different. He saw the face of an old friend, someone he had served with during his early days in security. They had argued over something trivial, and Leo had walked away, never looking back. Now, staring into the vision, he wondered if he would ever get the chance to make amends. "I'll do better," he promised silently. "If we get through this, I'll do better." Daniel watched his crew struggle with their emotions, wishing he could offer them comfort. But he had his own battle to fight. In his vision, he saw a mission gone wrong, a colony destroyed because he hadn't acted quickly enough. The guilt had haunted him for years, shaping every decision he made since. This time, though, he refused to let it break him. "We're not failing," he told himself firmly. "Not today." Despite the weight of their fears, the crew pressed on. Sophie adjusted the energy pulse settings one final time, ensuring the reactor's output would match the cloud's frequency. Emma rerouted auxiliary power to stabilize the shift shields, buying them precious seconds against the growing strain. Ryan steered Asterisk, the Horizon Asterisk, closer to the cloud's center, dodging waves of distortion that threatened to tear the ship apart. Finally, they reached the heart of the Devourer. It pulsed like a living thing, radiating both beauty and terror. Daniel gave the order. "Activate the pulse." Sophie flipped the switch, and the reactor roared to life. Energy surged through the ship, lighting up the darkness around them. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The vision stopped, the cloud stilled, and the crew held their breath. Then, with a deafening roar, the pulse erupted outward, flooding the cloud with overwhelming energy. The Devourer shuddered violently, its form twisting and collapsing inward. Lights flashed across the bridge as alarms blared, warning of critical system failures. The ship groaned under the strain, its hull cracking under the immense pressure. "We did it," Emma whispered, her voice trembling. But even as the cloud began to dissipate, she knew there was no escaping what came next. The reactor core was destabilizing, and Asterisk, the Horizon Asterisk, wouldn't survive much longer. The crew exchanged glances, their expressions filled with quiet resolve. They had done what they came to do. As the ship started breaking apart, they braced themselves, ready to face whatever lay beyond. The pulse had worked. The black cloud, the Devourer, was collapsing in on itself, its dark tendrils retreating like shadows fleeing the light. But Asterisk, the Horizon Asterisk, was breaking apart too. Alarms blared across the ship as sparks flew from consoles and walls groaned under the strain. The crew knew they were running out of time. Emma clung to her station, her hands trembling as she tried to keep the remaining systems online just long enough to send their final message. "We have to transmit the data," she said urgently. "If we don't, no one will know what happened here." Sophie nodded, her face pale but determined. She quickly compiled all the information they had gathered, the readings, the theories, the visions, and uploaded it to the emergency beacon. "It's ready," she said. "Just hit the send button." Ryan gripped the controls tightly, struggling to keep the ship steady as explosions rocked the hull. His knuckles were white, his jaw clenched. "We're not going to make it out of this, are we?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "No," Daniel admitted, standing at the center of the bridge. "But that doesn't mean we failed. We stopped the cloud. That's something." Leo leaned against a wall, holding onto a railing for support as the ship shook violently. He looked around at his crewmates, people who had become family over the months, and felt a strange sense of peace. "At least we went down doing something that mattered," he said quietly. Emma hit the send button, releasing the beacon into space. It would carry their findings back to human colonies, along with a warning. Never underestimate the consequences of unchecked ambition. As the signal shot out into the void, the crew shared a moment of silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Outside, the devourer continued to collapse, shrinking until it was nothing more than a faint flicker before vanishing entirely. Light returned to the Valen world, bathing the planet in soft hues of red and gold. The air felt lighter, freer. For the first time in years, there was hope. Back on the surface, Lyra and the other Valens watched as the black cloud disappeared. They didn't know what had happened to the humans aboard the Horizon Asterisk, but they could feel the change in the atmosphere. Survivors emerged from underground bunkers, shielding their eyes from the unfamiliar brightness. Tears streamed down Lyra's face as she realized the humans had succeeded, at great cost. On the Horizon Asterisk, the end came swiftly. The reactor core exploded, sending a shockwave through the ship. The crew braced themselves, holding tight to whatever they could find. Emma closed her eyes, thinking of her brother and hoping she had finally made him proud. Ryan whispered his sister's name, vowing to protect her even in death. Sophie thought of the stars, wondering if anyone would ever solve the mysteries she left behind. Leo pictured his old friend, smiling faintly at the memory. And Daniel stood tall, his mind filled with images of past missions and future possibilities. When the explosion finally tore through the ship, it was swift and merciless. There was no pain, only silence. Fragments of the Horizon Asterisk scattered across the sky, catching the light of the distant sun. From below, the Valens watched the debris fall, their hearts heavy with gratitude and sorrow. In the days that followed, the Valens began to rebuild. They worked tirelessly, determined to honor the sacrifice of the humans who had saved them. Statues were erected in memory of the Horizon Asterisk's crew, and stories of their bravery spread across the planet. Though they had never met these humans face to face, the Valens felt connected to them, a bond forged in courage and shared suffering. Far away, in the depths of space, the emergency beacon drifted silently. Its message would eventually reach human ears, carrying not just data, but a reminder of humanity's resilience. Even when faced with impossible odds, people could come together to do extraordinary things. And so, though the Horizon Asterisk was gone, its legacy endured. In the hearts of the Valens, in the lessons carried by the beacon, and in the renewed hope for a brighter future, the spirit of the crew lived on. Their sacrifice had ensured that life would continue, not just for one species, but for countless others yet to be born. The Valen world slowly began to heal. The skies, once darkened by the devourer, now stretched wide and clear, painted in soft shades of red and orange. Plants that had been dormant for years started to grow again, their leaves reaching toward the sun. Rivers flowed freely, carrying life back into barren lands. It was as if the planet itself was breathing a sigh of relief. Lyra stood on a hill overlooking the recovering landscape, her glowing eyes reflecting the colors of the sunset. She held a small piece of metal in her hand, a fragment of the Horizon Asterisk that had fallen near the palace. It was scorched and battered, but it served as a reminder of what the humans had done. They had given everything to save a species they barely knew, leaving behind only fragments like this one, and the stories carried by those who remained. Every day, Valens gathered around statues built in honor of the crew. Emma's name was etched alongside Sophie's, Ryan's, Leo's, and Daniel's. Beneath their names were simple words. They came when we called. They stayed when it mattered. Children learned about them in school, hearing tales of courage and sacrifice. For the first time in generations, the Valens felt united, not just as survivors, but as a people inspired to do better. Far away, in deep space, the emergency beacon continued its journey. Months passed before it finally reached a human colony orbiting a distant star. When the signal was picked up, scientists scrambled to decode the message. What they found stunned them. Data streamed across screens, readings, theories, warnings, all pointing to the existence of the Devourer. But it was the personal recordings from the crew that struck the deepest chord. Emma's voice echoed through the communication room as she explained their mission. "We didn't know if we'd make it back," she said, her tone calm despite the weight of her words. "But we couldn't turn away. If you're hearing this, it means we succeeded. Please, learn from our mistakes. Don't let history repeat itself." Sophie followed with technical details, her voice steady and precise. Ryan added his thoughts, speaking directly to his sister. "Take care of yourself, okay? You're stronger than you think." Leo's message was short but heartfelt. "Do better than we did. That's all I ask." And Daniel closed the recording, his voice firm and resolute. This wasn't just about saving the Valens. It was about proving that even in the darkest times, there's still hope. Keep looking forward. The colony leaders listened in silence, their faces filled with awe and respect. News of the crew's sacrifice spread quickly, igniting debates about humanity's role in the galaxy. Some argued that the story of Asterisk, the Horizon Asterisk, proved humans should stay out of alien affairs. Others believed it showed exactly why humanity needed to remain involved, to help, to learn, to grow. In the years that followed, the tale of Asterisk, the Horizon Asterisk, became legend. Songs were written, books published, and monuments erected in memory of the crew. Their actions reminded humanity of its potential, for good or ill, and sparked a renewed commitment to exploration and responsibility. Meanwhile, on the Valen homeworld, life flourished. The scars left by the Devourer would never fully fade, but they served as a constant reminder of the cost of hubris. Lyra often visited the statues at dawn, placing flowers beneath them. She whispered thanks to the humans who had come so far to save her people, vowing never to forget their sacrifice. And somewhere among the stars, fragments of Asterisk, the Horizon Asterisk, drifted silently, carrying traces of humanity's legacy. Though the ship was gone, its spirit endured. In the lives saved, the lessons learned, and the hope rekindled. Even in the vastness of space, acts of bravery could leave ripples that spanned galaxies. Though the end had seemed near, light had prevailed, and in that victory, both humans and Valens found a new beginning.